The envelope was already torn when I found it at the bottom of my father's desk drawer. Not opened carefully, torn like someone had started ripping it apart in anger, then shoved it back into hiding. My hands trembled as I pulled it out, recognizing the logo immediately. Sterling Medical Center. The hospital where I'd interviewed 6 months ago for the specialist position I'd been dreaming about since graduation. The position I thought I'd never gotten. My mother's voice drifted from the living room, talking on the phone with my aunt. She'll get over it eventually. She always does. The words hit me like ice water. I looked down at the envelope again, my heart pounding so hard I could hear it in my ears. The return address stared back at me. Official and unmistakable. This wasn't junk mail. This wasn't a rejection letter they'd hidden to spare my feelings. The torn edge told a different story entirely. Something deliberate and cruel. I slid the letter out with shaking fingers, the paper crackling in the silence of my father's study. The appointment date was printed in bold black letters near the top, impossible to miss. My eyes scanned the words once, twice, 3 times before my brain could process what I was seeing. We are pleased to offer you the position of pediatric specialist, starting September 15th. September 15th. 6 months ago. The room started spinning. I gripped the edge of the desk to steady myself, my knuckles turning white. I sat down hard on my father's leather office chair, the same chair I'd sat in as a child while he worked, thinking he was the smartest man in the world. The letter crinkled in my grip. 6 months of wondering what went wrong in that interview. 6 months of my parents telling me to be patient and keep applying elsewhere. 6 months of believing I wasn't good enough, that I'd somehow failed without knowing how. The date glared at me from the page, impossible to misread. They'd known. They'd known the whole time. I walked into the living room still holding the letter, my legs moving automatically while my mind struggled to catch up with reality. My father glanced up from his newspaper first. His expression changed in an instant. Not confusion, not surprise. Recognition. Guilt. The paper lowered slowly as his eyes fixed on what I held in my hand. My mother ended her phone call mid-sentence, her voice cutting off abruptly. She looked at the paper in my hand, and her face went carefully blank in that way she'd perfected over years of hiding her true feelings. "Oh," she said quietly, setting her phone down on the coffee table. "You weren't supposed to find that yet." Not, "You weren't supposed to find that." Like there was a timeline for my discovery, a planned moment when they would have told me. Something cold and hard settled in my chest, replacing the shock with something sharper. I held up the letter, my arm surprisingly steady despite the earthquake happening inside me. "You hid it from me," I said. It wasn't a question. My voice sounded strange to my own ears, too calm, too controlled. That seemed to frighten them more than yelling would have. My father set down his newspaper with deliberate care, folding it precisely along the creases like he had all the time in the world. "Naomi, we can explain," he started, but his voice trailed off as if he couldn't quite figure out what explanation would make this acceptable. "Explain what?" I interrupted. "Explain why you intercepted mail addressed to me. Explain why you let me think I'd failed." My mother stood up, smoothing her skirt with hands that shook slightly. "We needed time," she said, like that made perfect sense. Like stealing someone's mail was a reasonable parenting strategy. "Time for what?" I demanded. "To help you gain some perspective," my father added, his tone suggesting I was the one being unreasonable here. "About your priorities." I stared at them both, waiting for the punchline, for the moment when they'd laugh and tell me this was some bizarre misunderstanding. Neither of them laughed. They just stood there, looking at me like I was the one being unreasonable. Like hiding my future was a normal parenting decision, something any caring parent would do. It felt surreal, like something that happened to other people in stories you read online. Not to me. Not to Naomi Whitaker, the good daughter who followed every rule and never caused problems. I didn't yell. I didn't cry. I didn't throw the letter at them or storm out of the room. Instead, I carefully folded the letter once, then placed it on the coffee table between us like evidence in a courtroom. The paper landed with a soft sound that seemed too quiet for something so devastating. My mother flinched when the paper touched the wood. "We were going to tell you," she said. "When?" I asked, my voice still unnaturally calm. "When it didn't matter anymore." My father's jaw tightened in that way it did when someone questioned his authority. "Don't take that tone with us. We're still your parents." The laugh that escaped me surprised all three of us. It was harsh and bitter, nothing like my usual laugh. "Parents," I repeated, tasting the word. "Right. My name is Naomi Whitaker, and I was 26 years old when I discovered my parents had sabotaged my career. I'd always been the daughter who stayed late to help with family dinners, who brought dessert and set the table without being asked. The one who came home every weekend even after moving into my own apartment across town. The one who never asked for help because I didn't want to be a burden, didn't want to add to their stress. I'd spent my entire childhood trying to earn the pride I saw them give so easily to my younger brother, Andrew. Standing in that living room, holding proof of their betrayal, I realized something that made my stomach hurt. They had never believed I would actually leave. Not really. They'd been so certain of their control over me that hiding that letter had seemed like a reasonable choice to them. Like clipping a bird's wings and calling it protection. 6 months earlier, I'd come home from the interview practically glowing, my cheeks flushed with excitement and hope. The panel had asked challenging questions about pediatric care protocols and research methodologies, and I'd answered every single one with confidence. Dr. Phillips, the department head, had shaken my hand at the end and said, "We'll be in touch very soon, Ms. Whitaker." His smile had been genuine, warm, nothing like the polite dismissals I'd gotten at other interviews. I'd called my best friend, Kira, from the hospital parking lot, too excited to wait until I got home. My hands had been shaking so badly I could barely dial. "I think I got it," I'd whispered into the phone, afraid to say it too loud and jinx myself. "I really think I got it this time." That evening at dinner, I told my parents everything. The questions they'd asked, the tour of the pediatric wing, the way Dr. Phillips had mentioned my research paper on childhood diabetes management. I'd been so proud of that paper, had worked on it for months during my final year of medical school. My mother had smiled, but looking back now, I realized it hadn't quite reached her eyes. "That's wonderful, sweetheart," she'd said, her voice light but her expression tight. "The letter should arrive within 2 weeks." My father had nodded, cutting his steak with precise movements. "These things take time. Don't get your hopes up too high." I should have noticed the warning in his tone. The waiting had been torture. Every single day, I'd check the mailbox as soon as I got home from my temporary position at the community clinic. Every single day, there was nothing but bills and advertisements. After the first week, my mother started getting to the mail before me, claiming she was already outside watering the garden. "I was already outside," she'd say casually, placing the sorted envelopes on the kitchen counter. "Nothing from Sterling yet, honey." After the second week, I started doubting myself. Maybe Dr. Phillips's smile had been polite, not genuine. Maybe I'd misread his enthusiasm, projected my own hopes onto his professional courtesy. Maybe I'd botched an answer without realizing it, said something that disqualified me from consideration. By the third week, I was checking my email every hour, wondering if they'd sent a rejection digitally instead. My hands would shake when I opened my inbox, and my heart would sink when there was nothing there. My father patted my shoulder one evening, his touch heavy and somehow patronizing. "These things take time, Naomi. Don't get discouraged. Maybe this just wasn't meant to be." I'd believed him. I trusted both of them completely. What an absolute fool I'd been. What a naive, trusting fool. Now, standing in the living room with the truth literally in my hands, my mother uncrossed and recrossed her arms defensively. "You were getting ideas," she said finally, her voice taking on an edge. "About what?" I asked, though I already knew the answer. I wanted to hear her say it out loud. "About leaving. About being independent. About putting your career before family." She said the word career like it was something dirty, something selfish and wrong. My father nodded, jumping in to support her like they'd rehearsed this. And Andrew needed stability. He was going through a difficult transition, starting his business venture. We needed you here to help manage things, to be available. There it was. The real reason laid bare without shame or apology. My brother, who'd dropped out of college twice, who'd started and abandoned 4 different business ventures in 3 years, who still lived in the basement rent-free at 24, needed me to stay. So they'd made sure I had no choice in the matter. I thought about all the times over the past 6 months when they'd asked me to help Andrew with something. Just proofread his business proposal. You're so good with words. Just help him set up his accounting system. You understand numbers better than he does. Just talk to him about time management. He listens to you. Every request had seemed reasonable in isolation, each one small enough that refusing would have made me look petty. But together they'd consumed hours and hours of my time, entire weekends sacrificed to fixing my brother's mistakes and compensating for his lack of planning. Time I could have spent settling into my new job at Sterling, my new life as a specialist, the job that was supposed to have started in September. I looked at the letter again, scanning down to the bottom section. Please confirm your acceptance by September 22nd. The deadline had passed months ago. The position was gone, filled by someone else who'd actually received their offer letter on time. My parents had locked a door and thrown away the key, all while pretending to help me look for windows, all while telling me to be patient, to keep trying, to not give up. I waited for rage to rise up and consume me, for the kind of anger that makes people scream and throw things and say words they can't take back. It didn't come. Instead, something colder and sharper settled into place. A clarity I'd never experienced before, like everything was suddenly in perfect focus. I understand now, I said quietly, my voice cutting through the tense silence. My mother's shoulders relaxed slightly, relief crossing her face. Good. Then you see why I understand, I interrupted, meeting her eyes steadily, that you valued Andrew's comfort more than my future. I understand that you saw my success as a threat to your control over me. I understand exactly who you are. My father's face darkened, reddening with anger. Naomi, that's not fair. We've sacrificed everything for you kids. Fair. The word tasted bitter in my mouth. You want to talk about fair. But I didn't raise my voice. I didn't give them the emotional outburst they were clearly bracing for, the tears and accusations they could dismiss as hysteria. That was the moment everything changed. The moment I saw the realization dawn in their eyes. I wasn't going to yell or cry or forgive them after a few days of pouting. The moment they understood they'd miscalculated badly. The moment they lost me. I packed that night after they'd gone to bed, moving through my apartment in the dark. Not dramatically, not in a storm of tears and slammed doors. Just methodically moving through each room, separating what mattered from what didn't. Important documents went into a folder: birth certificate, medical school diploma, bank statements. Clothes I actually wore went into a suitcase. My laptop, my medical textbooks, the framed photo of Kira and me at graduation. All the pieces of my real life, the one I'd been building despite my parents' interference. I'd moved out 2 years ago, finally getting my own place after finishing medical school. But I'd never fully committed to it, never made it feel like home. My apartment had felt temporary, like a hotel room I was staying in until real life started, until my career took off and everything fell into place. Now I understood why. I'd been waiting for permission that was never going to come. Permission to succeed, permission to leave, permission to prioritize myself. When I carried the last box to my car at 2 a.m, I paused at the door. The building was silent, everyone else asleep. My mother's voice echoed in my memory from earlier that day. She'll get over it. She always does. Not this time. Not ever again. I slept on Kira's couch that first night, staring at the ceiling while she snored softly in the next room. She'd opened her door without questions when I showed up with my boxes at 3 a.m, just helped me carry everything inside and made tea. The grief came in waves. Not for my parents, but for the version of them I'd believed in for 26 years. The parents who wanted what was best for me. The parents who were proud of my accomplishments and sacrifices. Those parents had never existed outside my imagination. I'd created them in my head, filling in the gaps between what they said and what they did with the love I desperately wanted them to feel. But underneath the grief was something unexpected. Relief. The confusion was gone. The constant wondering what I'd done wrong, why I wasn't enough, why Andrew got praise for mediocrity while my achievements were met with warnings about pride. All of it lifted. They'd shown me exactly who they were. And I finally believed them. I took a smaller position at a community clinic the next week, something temporary that didn't require references or a lengthy hiring process. It paid less than Sterling would have, had less prestige, came with no opportunities for research or advancement. I didn't tell my parents about the new job. When my mother called asking where I'd been, I'd missed 2 Sunday dinners in a row, breaking years of tradition. I told her I was busy with work. What work? She asked, her tone suspicious. Just a clinic job, I said vaguely, keeping my voice neutral. Nothing special. Still looking for something better. I could hear the satisfaction in her voice when she responded, the barely concealed pleasure. Well, I'm sure something better will come along if you're patient. Good things come to those who wait. She thought I was struggling. She thought her plan had worked perfectly, that I was stuck in place, waiting for them to decide when I'd suffered enough and could be allowed to succeed. I let her believe it. Sometimes the best revenge is simply being underestimated. 6 months passed. 6 months of rebuilding my life quietly, away from my parents' watchful eyes and constant demands. I worked at the clinic, took on extra shifts, started volunteering at the children's hospital on weekends. Dr. Phillips, the department head from Sterling, happened to be doing rounds there one Saturday afternoon in March. He recognized me immediately, his face lighting up with surprise. Naomi Whitaker. I wondered what happened to you. You never responded to our offer letter. We were quite disappointed. Your interview was exceptional. My heart stopped. I explained carefully, watching his expression shift from confusion to shock to anger as I told him about the hidden letter. That's completely unacceptable, he said, his voice tight with fury. If you're still interested in working with us, I'd like to discuss opportunities. We have an opening coming up. My phone rang during that conversation, vibrating insistently in my pocket. My mother's name flashed on the screen. I ignored it, focusing on Dr. Phillips. She called again immediately. Then my father. Then Andrew. Then my mother again. 4 missed calls in 10 minutes. Something was wrong on their end. But let them panic for once. The voicemail my mother left was tight with barely controlled panic, her usually measured voice shaking. Naomi, we need you to call us back immediately. It's urgent. There's a situation with the property taxes and the business registration for Andrew's company, and we can't figure out the paperwork. The deadline is Monday and we're completely lost. You're the only one who understands these things. Please call us back as soon as you get this. I listened to it twice, my finger hovering over the delete button. No apology. No acknowledgement of what they'd done to me. No recognition that maybe I had my own life, my own problems, my own schedule. Just immediate expectation that I would drop everything to fix their problems. The problems I'd always fixed before. The administrative nightmares they'd always handed off to me because, you're so good at paperwork, Naomi. Because Andrew couldn't be bothered to learn, and they couldn't be bothered to make him. I saved the message and didn't call back. Let them wait the way they'd made me wait. Let them wonder where I was if I'd gotten their messages, why I wasn't responding. The texts started coming in the next morning, each one more desperate than the last. My father. Naomi, your mother and I need to speak with you about an urgent matter. Please respond immediately. Andrew. Hey sis, where are you? Mom and Dad are freaking out about some tax thing. Can you help? It's kind of important. My mother. This is serious, Naomi. We could lose the house. The penalties are severe. Call me now. That last one almost worked, almost broke through my resolve. The house I'd grown up in, the place where I'd learned to ride a bike in the driveway and spent hours reading in the backyard tree. Then I remembered that same house had a desk drawer where my future had been buried alive. I texted back one sentence to each of them. I'll come by Saturday to talk. 3 days away. Long enough to let the panic really set in. Short enough that they'd still be desperate when I arrived, willing to make promises they might even intend to keep. Saturday morning, I pulled up to my childhood home at exactly 10 o'clock. The lawn needed mowing, I noticed. Usually I would have offered to do it. Not anymore. My mother opened the door before I could knock, her face tight with stress and lack of sleep. Dark circles shadowed her eyes. Thank God you're here. Come in quickly. We need to sort this out before Monday. The kitchen table was covered with papers, tax forms, business registration documents, bank statements, all scattered in chaotic piles that showed how desperately they'd been searching for answers. My father sat at the head of the table, looking older than I remembered. His hair seemed grayer, his shoulders more slumped. Andrew wasn't there. Where's your brother? I asked, though I already knew the answer. He had somewhere to be, my mother said dismissively, waving her hand. But this is mainly his business paperwork that needs sorting anyway. Course. Andrew couldn't be bothered to attend the meeting about his own company, the crisis he'd created through his negligence. My mother slid a stack of documents toward me across the table, her hands shaking slightly. Can you take care of this? We're completely lost, and the penalties if we miss Monday's deadline, they're catastrophic. I didn't touch the papers. I didn't even sit down in my usual chair. I know why you hid the letter from Sterling, I said. The kitchen went silent except for the wall clock ticking loudly in the background. My father swallowed hard, his Adam's apple bobbing. Naomi, that was months ago. We did what we thought was best at the time. Best for who? Yes. Not for me. Not for my career or my future. My mother's expression hardened, her moment of vulnerability disappearing. We're your parents. We know what you need better than you do. You were too young, too eager to leave. You needed me to stay, I corrected, my voice steady. You needed me to keep managing your problems, to keep helping Andrew, to keep being the one who holds everything together while he gets to be irresponsible. My success wasn't part of that plan. My father stood up, his chair scraping loudly against the floor. That's not true. We've always been proud of you. We just wanted you to have perspective. Really? I pulled out my phone, opened my email and turned it toward them. Then why didn't you tell me that Dr. Phillips reached out 3 weeks ago with another offer? A better one. The color drained from my mother's face. Another offer. Her voice came out as a whisper. Head of pediatrics at Children's Memorial, I said, watching their reactions carefully. Double the salary of Sterling. Full research budget. My own team. Start date is next month. I paused, letting that information sink in. And I'm taking it. My mother's voice went soft, the way it always did when she wanted something, when she was trying to manipulate. That's wonderful, honey. We're so proud of you. But first, could you just help us with this paperwork? It'll only take a few hours. After that, we can talk about your new job properly, celebrate together as a family. No, I said simply. The word hung in the air like a gunshot. She blinked, genuinely confused. No, I can't help you. Not with the taxes, not with Andrew's business, not with anything else you've decided you can't handle without me. Father's face turned red, veins standing out on his forehead. You owe us, Naomi. After everything we've done for you, everything we've sacrificed, putting you through medical school, supporting you. I smiled, a small sad smile that felt strange on my face. I already paid what I owed. With 6 months of my life. With my position at Sterling. With every Sunday dinner and every weekend I spent fixing Andrew's mistakes instead of building my own career. My mother stood up, her voice shaking now. You're being selfish. This is your family. We're in real trouble here. Then hire an accountant, I replied calmly. Use the money you've been saving from not charging Andrew rent for the past 3 years. My father slammed his hand on the table, making the papers jump. This is about that letter, isn't it? You're punishing us. You're holding a grudge over one mistake. No, I said honestly, meeting his angry gaze without flinching. I'm protecting myself. There's a difference. I picked up my purse from where I'd set it by the door. I'm setting a boundary. I'm not your emergency contact anymore, not your problem solver, not your backup plan for when Andrew fails. I'm just your daughter. And being your daughter doesn't mean sacrificing my entire life for yours. My mother started crying, but they were angry tears, not sad ones. After everything we've done, you're just going to abandon us? Just walk away when we need you most. You abandoned me first, I said quietly, my voice steady despite the pain in my chest. You just didn't notice because I was still physically here, still answering calls. I walked out while they were still protesting, their voices following me to the car. My father shouted something about family loyalty and respect. My mother yelled that I'd regret this, that I was making a terrible mistake. Andrew's name came up repeatedly, how disappointed he'd be, how I was letting him down, how he looked up to me. I drove away without looking back in the rearview mirror. Over the next week, the calls continued relentlessly. Angry voicemails from my father about respect and gratitude and everything he'd done for me. Guilt-tripping texts from my mother about family obligations and what would the relatives think. Even Andrew finally reached out. Come on, Naomi. They're freaking out. Just help them this once. It's not that big a deal. I didn't respond to any of them. Instead, I called an accountant I knew from medical school, someone reliable and professional. I gave them my parents' number. They need help with tax paperwork, I explained. Send them your rates. The accountant called me back an hour later, laughing in disbelief. They hung up when I told them my fee. Said their daughter would do it for free, that I was trying to take advantage of them. I thanked her and hung up. They'd rather face penalties than pay for professional help. They'd rather lose the house than admit I wasn't coming back to save them. The deadline for their tax payment came and went. I heard through my aunt, the same one my mother had been talking to that day I found the letter, that they'd had to take out a loan to cover the penalties. The interest rate was apparently outrageous. Andrew's business registration lapsed because no one filed the renewal paperwork on time. He lost a major contract because of it. My mother called one last time. Her voice small and broken in a way I'd never heard before. We need you, Naomi. Please. We made a mistake, but this punishment is too much. You're destroying us. It's not punishment, I told her, keeping my voice level. It's consequence. You taught me that actions have consequences. I'm just applying the lesson. There was a long silence on the line. When will you forgive us? She asked finally. I thought about that question carefully. Maybe never. Maybe someday. But forgiveness doesn't mean going back to how things were. You broke something that can't be fixed with an apology. We're your parents, she whispered. That has to count for something. It does, I agreed. It counts for why this hurts so much. But it doesn't count for unlimited chances to hurt me again. I hung up before she could respond. It wasn't as satisfying as I'd imagined it would be during my angry moments. But it was necessary, like setting a broken bone. Painful but essential for healing. I started my new position at Children's Memorial on a bright Monday morning in March. Dr. Phillips personally showed me to my office. An actual office with my name on a placard beside the door. We're lucky to have you, he said sincerely, gesturing around the space. Sterling's loss is definitely our gain. The work was challenging, fulfilling, everything I dreamed about during the long years of medical school. I came home exhausted every night to the apartment I'd rented near the hospital, and I'd never been happier. My body ached, my mind was full, and I fell asleep within minutes of hitting the pillow. Kira came over one evening with wine and takeout Chinese food. How does it feel? She asked, settling onto my new couch. Being free. I thought about my parents, probably still struggling with paperwork they'd always assumed I'd handle. I thought about Andrew, finally facing the consequences of his own disorganization and carelessness. I thought about the letter, still in my desk drawer, a reminder of what I'd almost lost. "It feels like breathing," I said. Like I didn't realize I'd been holding my breath for 26 years. 3 months into my new job, I changed my phone number. I blocked my parents' emails. Not out of anger anymore. The anger had faded to something quieter, sadder. I did it out of self-respect. Out of recognition that some relationships are toxic no matter how much you love the people in them. No matter how badly you want them to be different. My mother tried reaching me through relatives. Sending messages through my aunt and uncle. My father showed up at the hospital once. But security escorted him out when I asked them to. I'd warned the front desk this might happen. Andrew sent a long email to my work address about family and forgiveness. About how I was tearing the family apart. I deleted it unread. The hardest part wasn't cutting them off. The hardest part was accepting that I'd needed to. That the parents I'd wanted, supportive, proud, loving, had never existed except in my imagination. That loving someone doesn't obligate you to let them hurt you repeatedly. That family isn't an excuse for cruelty or control. I kept the letter from Sterling though. Not as a reminder of their betrayal, but as proof of my own worth. Proof that I'd been good enough all along. That the problem had never been my skills or my dedication. They'd tried to hide my success, and I'd found it anyway. Not because of them, not in spite of them. Just because it was mine and it always had been. A year after cutting contact, I received a wedding invitation from Andrew. He was marrying someone I'd never met, probably because I hadn't been around for him to introduce us. The invitation was addressed to my old apartment, forwarded through several addresses before reaching me. I threw it away without responding. 2 years after that, my aunt called from a number I didn't recognize. My father had had a heart attack. Nothing fatal, but serious enough to be frightening. "He's asking for you," she said gently. "Maybe this could be a chance to reconcile." I thought about it for 3 days. In the end, I sent flowers to the hospital with a card that said simply, "Wishing you a full recovery." I didn't visit. I didn't call. Some people thought that made me cruel. Kira understood. "You don't owe them your presence just because he's sick," she said. "Especially when they've never apologized, never acknowledged what they did wrong." She was right. Forgiveness without accountability is just enabling. My career flourished. I published research papers, presented at conferences, mentored young doctors. I dated occasionally, nothing serious, still learning how to trust people with my heart. I made new friends, people who valued me for who I was rather than what I could do for them. I built a life that was entirely mine. Sometimes I still thought about that torn envelope. About how close I'd come to never finding it, to spending years wondering what was wrong with me. About how different my life might have been if I'd never opened that drawer. 5 years after finding the letter, I was invited to speak at a medical conference about pediatric care innovations. My research on childhood diabetes management had gained attention. As I stood at the podium looking out at hundreds of faces, I thought about my mother's words that day. "You were getting ideas about leaving." She'd been right to worry. I had left. I'd left their control, their manipulation, their small vision of who I should be. And I'd found something better. After my presentation, a young woman approached me. She looked nervous, clutching a folder to her chest. "Dr. Whitaker, I just wanted to say thank you. Your research helped save my daughter's life." We talked for 20 minutes. She showed me pictures of her daughter, healthy and smiling. This was why I'd fought so hard for my career. This was what my parents had tried to take from me. Not just a job or a title, but the chance to make a real difference. I never heard from my parents again after that brief hospital card. I didn't know if they were proud of my accomplishments, if they followed my career, if they regretted their choices. I decided I didn't need to know. My worth wasn't determined by their approval or lack of it. Some family members stayed in touch. My aunt sent birthday cards. A cousin invited me to her wedding. I maintained those relationships carefully, setting boundaries, making it clear I wouldn't discuss my parents. Most people respected that. Those who didn't weren't people I needed in my life. Kira got married when we were 30. I was her maid of honor, standing beside her while she married the love of her life. At the reception, someone asked why my parents weren't there. "We're not in contact," I said simply, and changed the subject. I didn't owe anyone an explanation. I didn't need to justify my boundaries or defend my choices. The letter from Sterling stayed in my desk drawer for years, a talisman of sorts. Eventually, I framed it and hung it in my office at the hospital. Not prominently, just on a side wall where I could see it when I sat at my desk. Younger doctors would sometimes ask about it. "Is that your first job offer?" They'd ask. "No," I'd say. "It's a reminder that my worth exists whether or not anyone acknowledges it." Some of them understood immediately. Others looked confused. I didn't elaborate. On my 35th birthday I bought a house. Nothing huge, just a small place with a garden and good light. It was entirely mine. No shared ownership, no one's name on the deed but my own. I planted flowers in the yard and painted the walls colors I loved. I hung pictures of people who actually cared about me. Kira came over for the housewarming with a bottle of champagne. "To new beginnings," she said, raising her glass. "To knowing my worth," I replied. We drank to that. That night, alone in my new house, I finally cried for the parents I'd never had. Not the real people who'd hidden my letter and demanded my service, but the parents I'd imagined as a child, the ones I'd kept hoping would appear if I was just good enough, successful enough, helpful enough. I grieved for the daughter I'd been, trying so hard to earn love that should have been freely given. And then I was done. The grief passed through me and left. What remained was peace. I woke up the next morning in my own house, with my career and my friends and my life stretching out before me like an open road. I'd built all of this myself, from the wreckage of my parents' betrayal. I'd taken their attempt to clip my wings and learned to fly anyway. Knowing your worth doesn't require revenge. It doesn't require their acknowledgement or apology. It only requires the courage to stop waiting for permission to live your own life. And that courage, hard-won and precious, was finally mine.